Hello and happy new year. Welcome back to my podcast. Happy to get going again. Going to try to get a little more regular with this, hoping for going at least most weekdays. I'm not much for um, New Year's resolutions, but at the same time, I'm going to give it a shot. So, I want to jump in today, talk a bit about 2024, some of the big stories in marketing, PR, and advertising. What's interesting, what's happening, talk a bit about AI, some of the things going on there, some of the advancements, some of the places where it hasn't advanced as much as we would have liked it to, and some of where I see that going as well. And then also just some of the big news in the industry. But before we jump into all that, let's start with a positive story, an interesting one, and it's one that was on everybody's mind earlier in the year, and everyone was talking about, and that's Taylor Swift. And let's look at her more on her PR strategy. What can we learn from Taylor Swift's PR strategy? What we do know is it worked. I mean, she made a bajillion dollars doing a tour on album sales, everything else. But what were the key things that made that so successful? And I would argue it came down to basically control over public image, engaging her fan base in unique ways, using her own platform to innovate within the entertainment industry, and then really having a calculated public presence. So the first thing is control over public image. She was very metered, very controlled in how she went about maintaining her image and presenting herself not just to her fan base, but to the general public as well. And she was very active with her publicity, kept it out there, and it worked really well. Another thing she did that really helped, though, is how she engaged her fan base. She used a combination of social media, traditional media, uh, and then the trade publications, getting to where her people were, the ones who were really interested in her, and getting in front of them, making sure that they saw what she was doing, things that she wanted them to see, and being, maintaining constant interest. On the public front, she was all over the news. She was there constantly. There's been 10 billion, I know I'm exaggerating a little, concerts throughout the years. There's been great artists. There's been phenomenal artists. There's been many artists. A lot of people would argue are far better than Taylor Swift. So, what made her so special this year? Well, it was her marketing. It was how she approached. It was her use of social media, her staying in touch with the fans, keeping it going, and then also using her own platform to promote herself. So not just with her channels, but using her concerts as her own promotional tours for her albums. Something that hadn't really been done too much before. And then also getting out in front of everyone everywhere she could. She made sure she was on TikTok, even though there was a lot of people that were kind of anti TikTok, the music industry going against it in many ways. She was out there everywhere and staying in front, and then with a very calculated public presence too. When she showed up at NFL games, that wasn't just her going to enjoy a show. Those were calculated, they were planned, they were to show an image. I mean, it was floating around a while back. There were contracts between her and Travis Kelsey, the teams, etc., onto what couldn't be said, etc. But it was a fascinating study, and love to do a deeper case study on it at some point. And one of the most successful PR marketing advertising campaigns um, for an artist, and she did things no one had ever done before and grew it huge. What else can we learn from this? The brand. The individual can be the brand can be the individual. But the more you make the individual the brand, the stronger it's going to be because people attach to humans, not to companies. And that's something I think people are learning more and more. But yeah, so that was a great example of just phenomenal PR, marketing, advertising, kind of all rolled together in an incredible um, campaign that produced outcomes beyond what anyone had ever imagined, especially within the music industry. But jumping into another topic here, and this one's a little more interesting, and it's something that I think she avoided quite well, but I think it's becoming more and more prevalent, and that is DEI. What is the future right now? We have seen kind of two things going on. We had a couple of really big fails this year. We had the Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney situation. Anyone who paid attention to that saw that the stock prices tanked, and we're really getting a whole challenge to the all publicity is good publicity. Now, I would make the argument. You could still make the argument, but at the same time, it brought some new things to the game. So, for example, if you look at Bud Light, um, that was obviously publicity that ended up being bad publicity. It hurt them. The stock tanked, did some serious damage, and they still have not fully recovered. So, is that good publicity? Well, no, it's not. But I would argue that it still could have been had they responded in another way and they had done it sooner. If they had taken the backlash, addressed it, and taken a different approach and come out, they could have capitalized on the eyes to do something new with it. But they didn't. And then the second one that's starting to play out right now, a little newer, and where we are still yet to see what the end result's going to be, is Jaguar. Jaguar just came out and hit with an ad that a lot of people found very alienating. A lot of people are saying, "My gosh, they're committing, brand suicide, etc." Well, I have a take that's a little different, and that is, if you look at Jaguar as a brand, my understanding is they had about 60,000 total sales of cars last year. That's a dying brand. It's a brand that's going away. And so they took a risk. They're taking a gamble. They are completely reinventing themselves. They are going from the Jaguar we've all known as that, British luxury car with, you can really picture pulling up and having a cup of tea as you're, getting ready to go drive your Jaguar. They have decided to instead go for a completely different model, and they are moving towards a super high-end luxury car. My understanding is the new Jaguar. They're going to be putting that at the Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Lamborghini kind of level and price point. They're trying to change their market completely. Now, you might say, well, they alienated all Jaguar buyers. Well, guess what? Jaguar buyers weren't buying Jaguars. The brand was dying. So the question is, will this work? Have they alienated a large part of their historical brand? They have. My brother owned Jaguars. He always loved them. He'll never buy one again. He thinks that they've gone off the deep end, if you will. Yet at the same time, they are putting themselves into a new market, and it's a market that is smaller. But if you raise a price point, you don't need as many sales. So the question is, will it work? The publicity's there. The eyes are on them. More people talked about Jaguar this year than have probably talked about Jaguar in the last 20 years, all over a single ad, which, when you think about it, is absolutely incredible. And they did that through controversy. Now, was that their intent? I don't know. I wasn't part of any of those campaigns, but the question becomes, will it work? And time will tell. But my thought is, if it's going to work, if they're going to save the brand, they got the eyes on it. So, can they leverage it now? Really becomes the question. And then on the flip side with DEI and advertising, we've had companies like Toyota, Walmart, Harley Davidson, Ford, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, Coors, Caterpillar, John Deere, Snap, Zoom, and Microsoft all come out in various ways, either saying they're going to cut the programs, laying off departments, not hiring for roles, etc. And I think we're going to see a big shift in the industry this year. Part of it has to do with the elections, part of it has to do with just general consumer sentiment, and part of it has to do with good old fashioned dollars and cents. DEI programs aren't cheap. And so it becomes a question of a cost benefit analysis. Is it working or is it not? And I think we're going to see a lot of that playing out in 2025. And it's going to be interesting to see who are the winners. Some companies are doubling down on DEI. For example, Costco's doubled down on it, said, hey, you guys are backing off. No, we believe that diversity, equity, inclusion is a core of what makes us who we are, makes us successful. So we're seeing people on both sides. We're going to really have to see where that goes. So that was another kind of big story in 2024. And I think it's going to become a bigger story here in 2025. But then, of course, the biggest overall story of all, AI. AI in advertising, marketing, PR. We had a lot of controversies this year. One thing is with AI, people still haven't figured it out yet. 2024 was the year everyone was talking about AI. I think 2025 is going to be the year of going from talking to action much more. We're just starting to see good AI companies popping up. There was so much hype going into 2024. Everyone was jumping on the AI bandwagon. And what they learned really quickly is it's not as easy as they thought it was. Now, you get a lot of people coming out now going, oh, AI is, it's not what it was cracked up to be. they're wrong. It's actually even more powerful. It's going to be even bigger than it was ever cracked up to be. People just haven't cracked the code yet. They haven't quite figured it out, and we're just getting there. Some examples, though, of where they haven't quite made it yet. Is if you look at Coca-Cola, their Christmas ads we just had, they used AI for the first time to help develop their ads. They did it in tandem with humans, but they took an AI focus. And some of the feedback they got was soulless, ugly, and lazy. I would argue those are all fairly fitting descriptions of their ads. They came out and said, "Hey, we didn't just use AI. We had a team, yada yada yada." The point is, it missed. It failed. And it's failed in many ways and with the biggest companies, but it doesn't mean it's the end of it. This is the learning phase right now. People are starting to figure it out. They're learning about it. They're going to get better with it. And the real question becomes, as they get better, where is it going to go? What has been proven is that there's still a need for the human touch, right? We've been running into tone deaf messaging, unintentional bias, and a number of other issues popping up with AI, accidental plagiarism. And what it showed is there's definitely still a need for a human touch, at least for now. I think through time, and I think this year we're going to see a very rapid development in this area. We're going to see it get better and better, stronger and stronger. But then there's been some other interesting things going on in AI. For example, in services, Google's been integrating AI into a bunch of different services. But there's been a lot of criticism around the lack of communication. How is it making things different? Great, AI is being used in your Google searches now. How's that benefiting the end user? They haven't really been telling that story, and people are getting skeptical. On the other hand, you have AI subtlety. Apple's been integrating AI quietly into a lot of its products and not making any noise about it. That also has some merits in the sense of the user experience is getting better. People may not attribute it to AI, but it's getting better. But they're also not necessarily doing enough to educate consumers on the capabilities and what they're doing, how they're doing it. It's also starting to bring more and more conversation around privacy, around data security, things like that. Netflix used AI for content and recommendations extensively for giving people ideas for what to watch, things like that. Well, one of the things that we're getting there is feedback is that people are getting put into echo chambers. AI is looking at what they've watched, giving them more stuff like that, and it's actually reducing the amount of variety offered. Now, at the end of the day, are people watching more because of it? Well, I don't know yet, but those are the questions that are going to get answered. And I think as AI gets better as the year goes on, it's going to get more and more seamless. And what we're going to start seeing is we're going to see AI start getting incorporated into every aspect of your life. And we're already seeing it. My washing machine I bought last year has an AI OptiWash mode. And it's the only mode my wife will use because, as far as she's concerned, the AI does a better job of washing her clothes than she can figure out by clicking it on her own. So the question becomes, as AI gets stronger, we start seeing more creative use of it, and some you're starting to see now, AI producing video, AI producing audio, AI producing scripts, AI writing. Um, as it starts influencing the content decisions more and more, as it starts determining casting decisions, plot development, at what point is it going to get better than human input, or is it? I think it will because when you think about it, AI is not doing anything new. It's taking a collection of all the data it has, all the information it has find on the internet, and it's putting together what it thinks is the best matches between things. Well, that's something a computer could do very efficiently, better than a human. Now, that doesn't mean creatives will go away. Creatives will always exist because the human mind itself is a computer beyond compare, and it's going to come up with new ideas that have never been thought of before based on things that may not come from existing data. Whereas an AI can't do that. It builds everything based on what already exists. True creatives, they come up with things from scratch. And I think we're going to see a growing need for creative directors who are truly creative on their own. And I've worked with some great ones through my years that have just come up with ideas that you would never think of if you don't have that creative mind. And I think creative directors are their own special breed of people. But if you don't have that creative mind, it just seems like magic because they come up with things that you never even had thought of. It's something you couldn't even imagine. And yet they can take it from non existent and turn it into a reality. That's something AI doesn't do. It takes things that exist and it remixes them into new ways, but it's not creating from nothing. And that's something where I think that's still strictly human, at least for now. And I think we're going to see a larger value put on that. Um, but then we're also running into some other issues with AI, and that's transparency and trust. And then also overpromising and under-delivering. As I said, coming into 2024, everyone was talking a big AI game. There was all the talk about, oh, AI this, we're going to incorporate AI into that. AI is going to change our lives. Well, with the year closing out yesterday, you know what most people realized? AI didn't have too much of a tangible impact on people's everyday lives, at least not that they notice or that they think about. I think 2025, we're going to see more of that tangible change. But once again, I think this ended up turning into the year of figuring it out, the sandbox, the learning, and we're not there yet. If you look now, we're starting to see companies that are doing AI advertisements. We're seeing AI script writing. We're seeing AI book writing. We're seeing a lot of AI specialty things come out. And we're going to see more and more of that. And as we do, people are going to get better and better at it. But people are still just barely tapping the capabilities of the foundation models right now. If you ever go in and you start playing with AI yourself, beyond Chat GPT or Grok, but you actually go in and you start developing AI, go into AWS, start using some of these foundation models yourself, start building within it, you start playing around with some of the different variables. What you realize is everything we have now is just a tiny, tiny window into what AI can do. And the power of it is predominantly untapped. But you have to think of AI almost like a toolbox. It's a toolbox of lots of different models, lots of foundations. We have some large language models, etc. Each of them excel in different things. Some of them are more, if you use Claude, right? Claude tends to be more creative. You use Titan from Amazon, it tends to be more straightforward. You start messing with the temperature settings, though, and you can start getting some crazy results. As you put these different pieces together, as you start figuring out how to use these different tools, what we're going to find is people are going to discover the right combinations for the right applications. And the more they do that, the more we're start going to see functional uses for AI that really do impact our lives. Um, and then the other part is we're going to see AI start getting used a lot more in practical application in the sense of not just asking it a question and getting a response, but AI just being integrated into what you're doing. For example, if you look at self-driving cars, if you look at a Tesla with FSD 13 that just rolled out, they're to the point where they're pretty much handling it on their own quite well. Well, as the AIs get better within these things, what we're going to start seeing is we're going to see through time the elimination of accidents. As AI gets incorporated into vehicles and they start communicating with each other, and the AIs are communicating with each other, accidents will become a thing of the past. Road fatalities will become a thing of the past. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. As we look into food production, medicine, etc., we're using AIs to figure out better approaches, how to combine. And this is something, there's been some articles recently of AIs discovering new ways to take different molecules and design new molecules for different medical purposes. It's something where right now it's right on, we're just getting there. We're just starting to see, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg. And as we get better with it, as people start to figure it out better, as more people get into AI development, as the crop of kids in school right now who are learning AI as children grow up, get through college, focus on it throughout a career, we're going to see development beyond what you ever believe. So 2025 is going to get better, but where we're really going to get blown away is in the next 4 or 5 years. It's just going to be incredible because once again, if you think of if you were to take AI and say it's, here's 100%, we are tapping 0.1% of its power right now. There's so much more it can do, and we're just not there. But with it, we're starting to run into an issue of a human versus AI interaction. Where do you draw the line? When should a human be doing it? When should the AI be doing it? Well, right now, I think we need to err on the side of human intervention. We need to err on the side of human first AI support because AIs just aren't that good yet. People haven't figured it out yet. They haven't programmed them well enough yet to get them to do exactly what they want them to do. I think the role of the human in AI is more important right now than honestly the role of AI in humanity. As time goes on, as they get better, I think eventually the human element will be removed almost completely because the AIs are going to learn so well. But right now, It's really about having the human. If you look at the examples of where things have gone wrong with AI, the marketing, the advertising, etc., it's almost all things that humans wouldn't do because they'd catch it and they'd say, "Oh no, let's do this differently," etc. Well, the AIs are learning and they're continually learning. And as we build larger and larger servers and larger, data centers, and these AIs get trained more and more and more, they're going to get to the point where they're not just going to be able to anticipate what a human would say, they're going to preempt it and they're going to start producing as strong as, if not better than a human would. But we're not there yet. I think that's probably another 3 to 5 years out. Then another big thing popping up in AI, and this is it could become a huge stumbling block to it, is ethical and creative concerns. Right now, the use of AI, as we saw like with Coca-Cola, it sparked a lot of debate around the displacement of humans, and is it good? Is it working? But then another huge issue that's starting to pop up is copyright and compensation. AIs, people are starting to realize, aren't creating; they are modifying. They are taking excuse me, stuff that already exists that they found online that exists in their database, and they're putting it together. If you understand the basic concept of how an AI model tends to work, is it basically takes tokens, it breaks your words down, it looks at those words, it predicts what's the most likely next word to come, figures out meaning to the best of its understanding as an AI, and then starts putting things back together based on meaning, based on it basically uses algorithms to say what should come next, right? Well, the problem is all those things that come next are things that already existed. So now you're running into issues of who owns it? What about when it's using copyrighted works to create outputs? Even if it's not a direct plagiarism and an exact copy, it's using the works of others. It is not creating on its own. Don't forget, this computer doesn't, AI's computers don't have a brain. They are using data put into them. Where did all that data come from? It came from humans. Do the humans own that data? I think we're going to see at some point a battle play out on who owns the output of AI. For example, from an intellectual property standpoint, if an AI puts out a new article of some sort or creates an image, who owns the image? Does the AI own it? Does the person who prompted the AI own it? What if it's an AI that's not running off of prompts, but it's a closed system AI or a non-large language model AI that's just designed to develop things and it's just creating things on its own all the time. And then let's say you just go and ask it for what it's created. Does that belong to the AI? Does it belong to all of the people who created the initial data pieces, if you will, that it used to generate it? Who should get compensated for what AI creates? If you use AI to create a piece of artwork, do you own that piece of artwork? Can you sell it? Does the AI own that artwork? Does the owner of the AI own that artwork? And these are questions that they just don't have answers yet. And I think we're going to see it, it's going to get to the point where someone's going to put something out via AI. It's going to trigger a human who created something to go and file a lawsuit. And we're going to see this play out in the courts. It's going to be interesting because based on the resolution of cases like this, it will determine the speed at which AI is going to progress. If the courts rule in favor of humans, we're going to see AI start to stagnate. People are going to be afraid to use it. If they rule in favor of the AIs, if you will, that basically what it creates is its own thing, what we're then going to see is, I think, more rapid growth because people will then have a defense. Oh, well, I didn't know the AI did it for me. And that's going to give them a way to get out of having to worry about it. Right now, there's a lot of issues popping up where people are writing articles via AI. AI is making up the content or plagiarizing content, one or the other. People are then putting it out as their own, and then they're getting in trouble. That's going to come to a head. And when it does, I think it's really going to shape the future of AI development and progress. Moving on to a couple of other things, just kind of big news in the field of marketing, advertising, and PR. The Omnicom IPG consolidation, $13.25 billion merger, basically to create the world's largest advertising holding company. Well, Why are they doing it? Well, one, it's going to save them approximately 750 million a year between the two companies are estimating through job cuts and operational streamlining. And it's going to give them a market power that allows them to just basically dominate the market. Now, what's this going to do for everyone else? I honestly think that it's actually going to end up a bad thing for Omnicom IPG. It's going to be good for everyone else. And why I think that is, you know, both those companies are massive. They also have very distinct, different cultures. When you push them together, you're going to have a lot of people, human capital. I said to the tune of 750 million a year, they're estimating human capital that's going to end up out. What are those people going to do? Well, they're not just going to retire. I think a lot of them are going to either A, go to other existing companies, or B, they're going to start their own. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a large rise in competition. We're going to have the giants. I think we're going to get a large rise of smaller players in marketing, advertising, and PR. And I think it's going to go along with the trend where you're seeing companies less and less going for a single agency of record and more on a project by project basis, working with 20, 30, 40 different companies that each specialize in something. So I think we're going to get a lot of niche marketing, advertising, PR agencies popping up that are really good at one thing. And I think we're going to see more large companies using those individuals for what they're good at, for their areas of expertise, instead of the giant conglomerates. Not to say they're going to go away, but I think overall it's actually going to be a boost to all the rest of the players in the industry. Second big piece of news, Whedon and Kennedy exited from India. Fascinating. They're one of the most renowned creative agencies in the world. They done a lot of work for Nike, and basically almost every major brand has worked with Whedon and Kennedy at some point. They decided to exit the Indian market in 2024. Well, why? Well, if you look into it, there's a number of factors, but I think really what it comes down to is they couldn't crack the code of the Indian market and they couldn't figure out how to profitably compete with the local Indian market. Um, the Indian market is developing incredibly quickly. It's getting bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter every day. And we're seeing tech companies grow so quickly, it's not funny. If you go to Pune, you will see tech companies popping up left, right, up, and down. And the growth is just so rapid, so fast that we're seeing an explosion right now there. And what it is, there's also cheaper labor costs there than we have here in the US. And so with that, they can afford to offer services at a cheaper rate as well. And so I think for the big companies, it's hard to compete because it used to be that the talent wasn't in India; it had all come to the US. And so people like Weed and Kennedy were effectively outsourcing it back to them. There's so much talent now in India, they don't need a large international player with artificially inflated prices due to stronger economies coming in. And so they've moved out. They gave up on it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, as the India market develops there. Also interesting to see Whedon and Kennedy how this impacts them long term. I don't think it's going to be a huge effect, but it will be interesting to see how creative develops and what companies start coming out of India there in creative. Because my guess is pretty soon we're going to see them coming to the US, but not as the cheap alternative, but honestly just as good, strong companies with incredible talent growing there organically to solve. Whereas as India's growing, the companies there are growing to meet the demand. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to see India's economy, and especially around marketing, advertising, PR, start to become self-sustaining, where they're taking care of themselves. If you've ever worked with an Indian company, it's a different culture, it's different people. They work well with the US, but they are distinctly very different. I think they're going to solve their own problems here. And I think India's need for outsourcing, for offshoring, is going to basically disappear because they're going to be able to handle it all within India. I think what we're going to do is we're going to see a lot more of the US outsourcing creative to India versus India outsourcing their creative from the US. So, it'll be interesting to see. But once again, just big news there is they're a major brand and they pulled out completely. So, finally, some big questions for 2025. And yeah, I touched on this a bit, but one is who owns creativity in advertising? Where does it end? The question is creativity in advertising, is it going to be owned by the creatives themselves, the creative directors? Is it going to be owned by the end client? Is it going to be owned by the agencies? Is it going to be owned by the AI? How does the intellectual property fit? What about the use of data in creative processes? Can AI own creativity? Who owns creativity? I think is going to just be one of the big questions because once again, it's going to determine compensation, it's going to determine use rights, it's going to determine a lot of things. I think the answer to that question is really going to steer a lot of the direction of marketing and advertising in AI going forward. And then another big conversation was going on in 2024. I think it's going to carry into 2025 is client versus agency. How much do clients control or should clients control creative output versus the agencies that they're using? Especially when those agencies are using proprietary methods. And once again, with the rise of AI, agencies are developing their own. As those AIs start developing, um, creative output, how much say should the hiring agency have? I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot more of brands not owning their own creatives, but actually agencies owning it. And brands just getting a say in whether or not they choose to use it and publish it. I think we're going to see a lot more licensing becoming the standard. It's gotten to the point where everything's on a license and a subscription plan now. I mean, you buy a car and your automatic start these days by your cell phone is on a subscription plan. You stop paying your subscription, you can't start your car from your phone anymore. I think we're going to see that kind of subscription and licensing model move more into creative, especially when it comes to AI. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see agencies holding their copyrights, and instead of brands owning their content, we're going to start seeing agencies owning their content and licensing it out to brands. And that's going to be interesting though when data comes into play is when we start using data for development of content. Where are those lines drawn and how's that going to work? And I think that's going to be one of the big questions of 2025. So I think we're going to start moving more towards a service-based model, if you will, of no longer owning your own media. Um, but it's going to be interesting to really to see how that plays. And I think it's really going to tie into the other questions I was asking. And then finally, the biggest question I think for 2025 is what is the future of PR? Public trust in legacy media is now at an all-time low. It's gotten to the point where most people don't believe traditional media when it says good morning. A lot of this played out through the elections, and we saw just an absolute collapse of all trust in legacy media. Well, PR traditionally has focused on legacy media. I come from a PR background myself, actually, as things were starting to fall apart. I saw the write on the wall years ago. I started moving more out of PR, more towards marketing and digital marketing. But really, the question becomes what's the future of PR? A big brand is not going to go hire a PR firm to get them put in the news if people aren't trusting the news. So, how are PR companies going to adapt? And I think really what we're going to see as the future is a lot more PR moving away from traditional media as the outlet and moving towards the influencer economy. And it's going to be an interesting one because PR has always walked the line of organic versus pay to play. Now, mind you, no one in PR will ever say it's pay to play. In fact, they stone me just for saying those words. At the end of the day, to a certain extent, that's what it is. And not in the sense of the media's paid to be, go and you'll get it in there. But it's pay to play in the sense of companies are paying to get their media into traditional media organically, if you will, and avoiding quote unquote pay to play. Well, I think what we're going to start seeing more is just becoming straight pay to play. I think the traditional media, as it continues its collapse, unless they turn around, we're going to, as we see a continual collapse of it, they're going to start getting into pay to play more because they're going to need to fund themselves. And then, as I said, heading towards the influencer economy, I think that is going to become more pay to play space as well. So then the question becomes where does true public relations and organic media fit? Well, I think owned media is going to become a big one. And I think it's going to be brands creating their own influencers. You take a brand like Nike, and I think what they're going to do is they're going to go and they're going to find people in Nike who are good at the social media game and love it and tell them, hey, go nuts. We'll fund you. We'll give you your living. We'll pay your salary. Go create a YouTube channel. Go create a next channel. Go do this or that. Go out there and create media and start your own show. And then what they'll do is they will use that for their marketing organically because and it's funny, it's kind of actually going to move back to how television shows used to work. If you go back, you know, go back to the times of, um, you know, just like the Marx Brothers, some of my favorites. If you look at the Marx Brothers, they used to have pauses in their shows. Go back to any old show. They would have breaks, and it was this show is brought to you by, and then they would do the advertisement. Or quite frequently, the host would say, "And tonight's episode is brought to you by XYZ." Or quite frequently, even entire TV shows were fully sponsored by a specific brand, and that brand sponsorship is what allowed that TV show to run. And when they lost the sponsorship, that was quite frequently the end of the TV show. Red Skelton used to do a lot of advertisements for window cleaners. Soap companies were famous for it, etc. I think we're going to start seeing that same kind of model coming out in the influencer market. And so what we're going to do is you're going to see shows, like mine, where it's going to be, MCG brought to you today by such and such. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that popping up. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow brands to get in front of audiences that they're interested in in a and it's still an organic fashion. Because, for example, if you're, going to the Nike example, when you have Nike employees doing this, they're going to be Nike enthusiasts. It's going to be a Nike employee who, let's say, loves sneakers. They're going to start a show on sneakers funded by Nike. Now, is that pay to play? No. Is it organic? Effectively, yes, in the sense that you're just getting talent that's interested in what you do, and then you provide them the means to do it. So, for example, if I wanted to, sell a car, instead of going out and putting all kinds of advertising on, car shows or on TV, etc., why not instead go out and find people who just absolutely love my brand of car and sponsor them to do a daily podcast on cars? Does it have to be really directly your brand? And I think we're going to start seeing that as the future of what we now call PR. I think is going to start to die out. Mind you, there's always going to be a spot for it. There is a certain area within PR. It's just never going to die. There are people that still go there for news, and there's certain hard news stories that people will go there first. But I think more and more we're going to see the functions of traditional PR move over to influencers and social media with the rise of X, with the rise of YouTube, depending on how everything goes with TikTok, it looks like it's going to stay around. What we're going to start seeing is more and more people moving to the social media space, and I think we're going to see brands moving there as well, but not as the brand, just instead as sponsoring creators, and those creators are going to go out there and they're just going to put out content, and the brands are going to strategically align with that content. I'm not talking about unboxing and product reviews. I'm talking about just good organic content being made by creators, sponsored by brands. I think is going to be the future, and I think going to be the biggest replacement for traditional legacy media. Well, that's all I have really to talk about today. I will be coming back tomorrow. Lots of stuff to go over. I have lots of things I'm excited about this year, lots of things I want to see grow. And I think it's going to be an incredible year for the marketing and advertising and PR worlds. I think we're going to see a lot of changes. And I think AI is going to be on the forefront of those changes. I think this year is going to be the year we really see that impact of AI, not just the talk of AI. So feel free to tune in. I'm generally going to be streaming around this time, around 10 o'clock. Decided to move it to a night stream based on my very unscientific study of about 6 people who said when they would be interested in seeing my stream, and it just fits well with my personal schedule. And as always, please, 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 if you have any questions, post them in the comments. I would love to address them. If you have any questions related to marketing, advertising, PR, or anything else, I'd be, you know, give me any topic in the world and I'll take a look at it through marketing colored glasses and give you an answer. But thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Happy New Year. God bless. And I'll talk to you all later.